Hello, friends. Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome to a special 1 o'clock Pacific time, Mountain time episode of the PHNX Cardinals podcast. I'm Johnny Venerable on this Football Friday. He's Brack at the PHNX headquarters in downtown Phoenix. And Bo, it's now or never for you, Kliff Kingsbury. Go out and save your season Sunday against Geno Smith.
That's right. Absolutely. It is Mountain time, just to confirm. That's where we are because we're holding tight. Go Arizona. No daylight savings time.
It's cold, though. I don't know. I didn't sign up for this garbage. I thought.
Yeah, look at me. I got my Manning quarter zip on right now. It's a little cold out there. I will say I was the only media member yesterday, like a fool, standing out there in a t-shirt as the wind was. We had gale force winds blowing us out there on the practice field as I'm trying to see if DJ Humphries or James Conner's out there. So I wisened up, but I got the quarter zip and was out there on the practice field today. Did see old DJ Humphries out there for 3rd Street Day. We saw James Conner and we saw Budda Baker return to the practice field. But our good old friend Kliff Kingsbury not giving us too much as far as what their availability is going to be come Sunday. Called all 3 pretty much game time decisions. Now, I mean, we can try to decipher, just off of past performance, whether or not we think they're going to play. James Conner, I'll believe it when I see it. But as far as the other 2 guys, as far as Budda Baker and DJ Humphries, I got a little bit more confidence that they could be out there come Sunday.
Help me understand. Last week, Humphries, did he practice
he did.
Thursday, Friday?
Friday again. Yep.
And then, so this is the second consecutive week that Humphries has done this routine, and he missed last weekend, obviously, against the Vikings. Now, Josh Jones, you would assume, not a huge drop-off from DJ Humphries with the way he played last week, but my concern more so is at the running back position. The Cardinals need the physical presence of James Conner back, and you can run on this Seahawk team. We saw Eno run effectively in the first quarter of that loss at Seattle. But, man, just you think about when this team wasn't at full strength last year and DeAndre Hopkins was out and Kyler Murray was out, they rode number 6. James Conner was their offensive MVP. He made the Pro Bowl, right? He had almost 20 touchdowns. I mean, what kind of boost could he give them even in a limited role, Bo?
I think it just improves your red zone offense, which has been pretty putrid all season long. Right? What are they in the red zone? They're performing 10% worse than they were at the end of last season, which was not efficient. I think they're around 33% as far as cashing in touchdowns, and that's just not good enough. So you add DeAndre Hopkins, who's caught every target that he's seen in the red zone since he came back. He's 3 for 3. Benjamin's been efficient down there, but you don't have that guy that's just been money in the bank in James Conner. And sure, he wasn't same James Conner, but keeping in mind that this team was trailing the entire time he was healthy. So to kind of get a back of his caliber involved when you're chasing usually double-digit scores, it's not conducive to him getting involved. So yeah, Mikey, to get his physical running style back, couple it with maybe more of a thunder and lightning with Benjamin and probably Keontae Ingram now with Darrell Williams on the shelf for the remainder of the season. Yeah. You got to like it.
I'm looking at the box score from the Cardinals' loss at Seattle all the way back on October 16th. And that day, the Cardinals scored a season-low 9 points. Kyler Murray, probably his worst game of the year. 22 of
They scored 3. I mean, they had the special team touchdown.
Yeah, that's true. The offense was abysmal. It was the worst I've seen in the Kliff Kingsbury era. Kyler went for 23 of 37 with a pick. He did rush for 100 yards on 10 carries, but outside of that, Benjamin, 2.5 yards per carry. Keontae Ingram, 2.3. Ertz was their leading receiver. The secondary option was Hollywood Brown, 68 points. The defense played well. Defense gave up under 20 points, should have gotten the W, didn't. What's the X factor this weekend, Bo? You look ahead. Robbie Anderson, by hook or by crook, Kliff said he's going to get him some snaps. The offensive line's beat up, but the skilled players at least should give the Cardinals more explosiveness than we saw a couple of weeks back in Seattle.
When you talk about, an X factor, it's got to be the interior of that offensive line playing way better than it did a couple weeks ago. That was the real. What really changed the game was the pressure that Shelby Harris and crew were able to get and force against this Arizona Cardinals offense that just completely blew up what they were trying to do offensively, especially close to scoring. And no, I mean, if you're looking for an X factor, I mean, the difference maker is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. He wasn't available back then. And I think, when you think of an X factor, you think of somebody who's not, the usual suspects as far as who you expect to perform at a high level offensively for the Arizona Cardinals. But you have to hope that you get a bounce back from Billy Price at the center position, because Rodney Hudson was ruled out as early as Monday. And then that Cody Ford continue and Will Hernandez continue to be kind of a steady presence at the guard spots, and then DJ Humphries potentially being back in there at your left tackle spot just provides some continuity that was missing last week. And also just the fact, here's another X factor now that I just think about it. It's the fact that you're not up there in Seattle. You're not in front of the 12s. You're not in a hostile environment like you were last week in Minneapolis, which was unbelievable what they were able to do to the Cardinals offense and force Kyler Murray to wear a wristband for the first time in a long time. I think that the crowd and being at home should steady some things too offensively for this Cardinals team.
Picking spreads. If we lose Sunday, Kliff is FIRED, fired. I think that is the general consensus around Cardinal Nation. 80% feel like if Kliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals lose Sunday, regardless of how it looks, right? Because I don't care if they lose 19-3 again. I don't care if they lose in a shootout. It's a loss is a loss in this game. There's no moral victories when you're starting a $45 million quarterback in Kyler Murray and they're starting Geno Smith. And picking spreads, while I don't think it would happen on Sunday, we have talked about it ad nauseum. Kliff Kingsbury is on the most important stretch of his career. 3 straight divisional games. I do think that if we fast forward and we're sitting here now at the end of November and they can't beat McVay, Shanahan, and Pete Carroll back to back to back with a roster maxed out at cap space, you got J.J. Watt, you got D-Hop, you've added pieces in the draft, and you're a last place team this time next month, I do think he would be fired, Bo.
Yeah, I don't think that you're far off there. I mean, I do disagree with it in the way that they lose. If they come out offensively and they put up a bunch of points, maybe score over 30, and then the defense lets them down, then maybe. I think they're just you try to hope, or you hope, I guess, if this team fails, right? The silver lining would be that they leave without a doubt who's to blame for it, and maybe no crutch that the people who put you in a position not to be successful are identified, right? That stand out. You can say, okay, well, now we know that it's on Kliff and his inability to get this offense going. There continues to be too many issues as far as getting the play call in, wasting timeouts, penalties, and just maybe ineffective play calls, that you're like, okay, now I've seen it. Especially within the division, we see that this team can't compete with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks defense. Kliff can't figure it out. It's just like losing to Ohio State or Michigan if you're on the sidelines of either one of those. If you don't do it, it doesn't matter what you do overall, because you can't compete in your division year in and year out.
And that's the thing. I thought Kliff Kingsbury had turned the corner on last year. You go 4-2 in the division. I know you started, I think, undefeated, and you lost the final 2 games, but you're always compared to how you do against your peers. And if you're starting the year 0-3 and swept by what everybody assumed was going to be a last place, not only last place in the NFC West, but one of the worst teams in the NFL in the Seattle Seahawks, the investments they've made, the fact that they're playing more rookies than any other team, you lose to that team in convincing fashion, because let's be honest, Bo, that game in Seattle wasn't as close as even the score indicated. Yeah. That game was over in the 4th quarter because the Cardinals couldn't move the football on Kliff Kingsbury's side of the ball, his savant, the genius offensively. They couldn't do anything. If you come out again and lose again to Pete Carroll, this would be their 3rd consecutive loss, twice at home. If I'm Michael Bidwell, I'm looking around thinking to myself, how and when is this going to get better? And on the flip side, if you're able to win and kind of put a halt to this little mini run that Seattle is having and get doubt in their mind, and you're creeping your way back to 4-5, and then depending on how LA looks, we could be sitting here next week and having a completely different conversation. I don't know. It's hard for me because they looked good against the Saints, but they weren't perfect. And then at times they look good moving the football against Minnesota, but critical mistakes. When are those critical mistakes going to finally, subsidize a little bit and this team play a complete 4-quarter clean game? We talked about it, Bo, on our audio-only podcast yesterday. I can't think of a complete game clean wire to wire that they played this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you can't say that New Orleans was, because they were pretty absent in the first quarter, and it took really the offense. You got a couple of field goals here from Rodrigo Blankenship at the time, and then you had this offense finally find the end zone and tie things up, and then the defense really got your back with back-to-back pick sixes, and then you could really deploy what this Cardinals offense was supposed to look like. And then it came out of the second half of the locker room in the second half and looked flat again. I don't know if it was just them trying to reincorporate DeAndre Hopkins a little bit more. I saw Kyler force some balls to him, but no, I mean, you should be encouraged by this offense the last couple of weeks. I think that that's something that you need to kind of pivot your frustration and your hate for, Kliff and, the first 6 games of the season. You got to separate these last 2 games, because it hasn't been perfect, but it's been good enough outside of the errors that they made at the end of the game against Minnesota. So here's the reality is, like, they continue to be so close. They've lost only a few games by double digits or 2 possessions, right? But you don't have any. You can't make those excuses. How long are you going to make those excuses and try to force feed them to your fan base? I mean, at some point, you just have to win football games. This is an opportunity. Look, you're playing one of the hottest teams in the NFL. Like, Seattle isn't just playing well; they're playing really great football right now. They dismantled LA. They handled the Cardinals before, and then they won that game pretty easily last week against the Giants. I mean, you have an opportunity here at home to kind of really change things as far as how your season's going and how their season's going.
Jalen Blair in the chat, real question. Cards are one of the most injured teams in the league. Actually beat up scores show that they're the most injured team. Why doesn't Cards get benefit of the doubt like other teams? Here's what I will say. Because their quarterback is healthy and he's making $45 million. And yes, they're missing key pieces, but a lot of other teams that are having success are missing key pieces. And they were already under a microscope with Kliff Kingsbury. Like, Sean McVay can have a mulligan year. He just won the Super Bowl, right? The Niners every other year with Kyle Shanahan are inept because of injuries, and right, the next back year they're rolling in. The Cardinals have been inept in a lot of ways for almost a calendar year. If they had won the division last year, Bowen, won a playoff game and had success, and then this year taking a step back, we're missing Pugh, we're missing Rodney, right? And we're missing Hollywood. D-Hop missed the first 6 games. Like, people would have sympathy for that. People would understand. But they're losing not only to teams that are inferior, but in most cases, in a lot of cases, especially offensively, with his side of the ball, they're not competitive. They can't score first quarter touchdowns. It's one thing to say they have injuries. Yes, absolutely. We should be cognizant of that, respectful of that. But you can't not score points in the first quarter. You can't lose to Detroit in embarrassing fashion last year. You can't lose at home to Carson Wentz and the Colts and then have it carry over to this year. Time after time, you're playing from behind. I mean, they can't get a lead in games. That's more than injuries, in my opinion.
Right. And for the most part, when you look at it offensively, it looks the same, right? It looks like it's the same game plan deployed, and it's like the first 12 to 15 plays, they're scripted, right? And those have been the worst plays really called all season long. So, as far as the skepticism that really started with the head coach in Kliff Kingsbury, and why did you extend him? Like, he hasn't done a good job in answering those skeptics. Like, there's been nothing this season that you could say, okay, all right, he proved here that maybe it was the right decision to lock him in for the next 5+ years. There just hasn't been that. I mean, his opportunity to kind of show that without a stacked deck, without a DeAndre Hopkins elite caliber wide receiver, that he struggles. He struggles mightily, and I know that across the league you're seeing that. But at the same time, like, coaches who can elevate talent, that's what you want. That's what you need. And this team needs to add to the offensive mind in that building. It needs to be beyond the two guys that have pretty much been the mainstays the last couple of years in Kyler Murray and Kliff Kingsbury. I mean, those guys at times this season were struggling the most.
Yeah. Another comment here, JP, the Rams have the worst offense in football. No one is giving McVay doesn't get a pass. Kliff has been bad, has never been that bad, even without Hopkins. And again, I think it just goes back, JP, to the point Bo just made, where he had his skeptics and his critics already, and it's hard. I mean, sure, the league plays favorites, right? But I would argue, I see people in the chat talking about Justin Herbert. I mean, most people do not take Brandon Staley serious, and most people think that even with their injuries, they should win the games that they're losing. I mean, losing to Seattle is not acceptable if you're a Charger fan. So it's not only specific to the Cardinals. Now, we cover the Cardinals on a daily basis here. Yeah. We live, breathe, and eat this team. But you go around the scope of the league, there are other teams that are being, quote unquote, exposed. And the Cardinals are in that group right now. And it's up to themselves to dig themselves out. And listen, I don't tell people what to do with their money. I only ask that if you're going to gamble, do it on DraftKings. New customers can make any $5 NBA moneyline bet, get $200 back if your team wins. And not sure if you heard this or not, but you can also boost your winnings 100%. DraftKings step up same game parlays. Made some coin last night betting on Thursday Night Football. The Eagles seem like easy money every week. And it's simple for you to get downloaded. DraftKings, use that promo code PHNX. That's promo code PHNX on DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. My DraftKings pick of the week. I like the Packers at -3.5 at Detroit. They own the Lions for better or worse. No matter how bad the Packers look, the Lions of Detroit do not beat Aaron Rodgers. So 3.5 seems like a safe bet, a get-right game for the Packers and company, Bo.
All right. I know they got a couple injuries there at the wide receiver core, but doesn't matter. Aaron Rodgers is going to find a way. We're teamed up with Four Peaks to host our U.S. and Mexico World Cup matches. Yeah, it's November already, and the end of the month, we're going to have some great watch parties for these two teams here. Match day, watch along with PHNX and Four Peaks. We're going to have ourselves some beer specials, giveaways, guest appearances, and more. Check the link in the show notes just below. Got to be 21 years or older. Enjoy responsibly. And I'll say this, I said it on the audio-only podcast, like I've lived in the Valley a long time, and the last time the World Cup came around, going and trying to watch it at a bar somewhere, it's nearly impossible. You have to get there so early. So it's free. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes, and you will get yourself a seat at our U.S. or Mexico watch parties the whole way through. You can get your seat right now. If you don't do it, you're gonna live in a whole world of regret going forward.
We're keeping our conversation going. Cardinals hosting the Seahawks this weekend on Sunday. And Bo, did you know the Cardinals have given up the most touchdowns to opposing tight ends in the NFL this season? I thought, Simmons and Collins, and we're supposed to fix that. Well, Will Dissly's coming to town. He's one of the players I think you'd have to key in on if you're a Seahawk fan to expose in this Cardinal defense. But, I mean, let's go to the main event here. Kenneth Walker has been on an absolute tear as potentially the runaway rookie of the year offensively. The Cardinals were undressed by Kenneth in Seattle a couple weeks back. Very difficult time tackling him in that game. What do they need to do in your mind to be able to, slow down a guy who's averaging almost 5.5 yards per carry for a Cardinal defense that, I mean, they made out and made a move at defensive tackle this week, but they have been known to give up big plays on the ground.
Oh man, I don't know. Just drop down on your knees and pray the next couple nights, like really hard that maybe he falls down Danny Jones style. I have no idea. I mean, as far as slowing down Kenneth Walker, he's fresh legs. He's a rookie out of Michigan State. Cardinals, Kliff Kingsbury even said they interviewed him in the pre-draft process, loved him.
Oh, very convenient to say that, Kliff.
That kind of stings, doesn't it? But no, I mean, as far as Vance Joseph, his scheme has to be right, and then his players have to execute. It just comes down to it, and they're going to have to see some big plays by guys like J.J. Watt. They're going to need Marcus Golden to get back to where he's one of their best edge run defenders, and they're just going to have to contain a guy like Kenneth Walker, because this Seahawks team, when they've been able to kind of really establish the run, it's not Russell Wilson. It's not that defense. It's more, that's what's made that Seahawks team so successful over the last decade plus, is when they've been able to get the run game going. When they had beast mode, Marshawn Lynch, they got it going there. When they got Chris Carson and he was healthy, they were rolling. At the end of last season, everybody's like, it just coordinated with Russell Wilson coming back, but it was also the emergence of Rashad Penny, who was an absolute just beast at the end of the last season. And then this season, when Kenneth Walker emerged, it's been the difference maker. And that's how Pete Carroll likes to win football games. He likes to take the air out of the football, and he likes to run it down your throats. And you've got to be up for the challenge of slowing him down for the first time really in his NFL career.
It's unfortunate because I think the Seahawks feel like, Bo, that they're playing for their postseason beginning this weekend, because you get to 6-3. Yes, the Cardinals fell out of favor at 6-3 2 years ago, but they've got the Raiders on their schedule still. They've got the Panthers on their schedule. I mean, we'll see how they do in division against teams like the Rams. They've already been blown out by San Francisco, but they're going to start to feel themselves even more. You get past the halfway point and you're in a position. I don't think anybody expects them to win the division, but I mean, 9 wins, we've always felt like it's going to probably get you into the dance, into the postseason. Pete Carroll will be the runaway coach of the year, in my opinion, if he takes this ragtag group of draft picks and journeyman veterans alike to the playoffs. And it would be a bigger indictment. Again, we're not rooting for losses here, but we're talking about, in reality, this was a team that before the season, everybody assumed would be 2 W's. They are full rebuild mode. They gave away Russell Wilson. They got a bunch of assets in the future, right? Nobody took Drew Lock seriously, of course. You know, the rotational tight end that they got, a defensive lineman. It was a trade down the line. That's why they got the multitude of draft picks that they got. To lose this game, the fact that I'm going to do this in real time, this is not good podcasting, but I'm going to tell you, what do you think right now, Bo, the salary cap is currently for the Seattle Seahawks this year?
I mean,
like, how much are they spending on players right now?
I mean, there's a floor, obviously, that they need to get to. I would say 185. I don't know.
So next year, so in the spring, right? Because I think there's some dead money associated to this. They have almost $60 million to spend next year on top of multiple first-round picks. The Arizona Cardinals, we know, are a little bit cap-strapped, and their quarterback's salary continues to go up. So again, we talked about this on our show yesterday. It's like, who's trending up and who is not? And you have to give Michael Bidwell, if you're Steve Keim and Kliff Kingsbury, reason to believe that it will be different. And if you lose this game, that is when I think significant doubt creeps in, because it's not a talent problem. Sure, the Seahawks have talent, Kenneth Walker and DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, but they're starting, mid to late round rookies all over their defense, right? It's no names left and right. What does that tell you? It's coaching. It's a coaching mismatch. The Cardinals have all these supremely gifted players that they've touted up to the media, to the fan base. These guys are going to help get us to the next level of great Cardinal football. And if you're watching, as much as I love him, Zaven Collins get plowed downfield and run over by Kenneth Walker, and you can't stop a nosebleed, and you're paying J.J. Watt a premium, and then on the flip side, if you're Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and you can't get into the end zone, that you just sit back and you throw your hands up. If you're Michael Bidwell, you just say, they're doing the opposite. They're rebuilding, and we're still getting our ass kicked. Something's wrong here.
Right. And then you say, hey, maybe it's time to hit the reset button, all except for that guy I just paid $230.5 million, right? And say, hey, I'm selling my house in Paradise Valley. We're gonna bunker down. We're gonna get a house together.
We're moving in with me
and Ron Burgundy. He's like, we're gonna get a house together, and we're gonna figure this thing out. All right, I missed your Musk, and we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna do this together. You and me, number one. We're going to figure out how to rebuild this thing. But it takes hitting on your draft picks, and Kyle Odegaard picked that out. I mean, as far as what they did from round 1 to 7 and how they were able to hit guys like Tariq Woolen and Kenneth Walker in later rounds, and then also hit on guys, big picks like the kid out of Texas A&M at the tackle spot who's been solid. And, that it takes for franchises that are on life support and trying to keep themselves out of the cellar, it takes a good draft class. And Sean Payton, who we've talked about a couple times this week, like his franchise got infused talent by just a solid draft class from like 1 to 4 and a guy in the later rounds, a third-day pick. And the Colts have had solid draft classes before. The Niners have had really solid draft classes before. I mean, outside of maybe one, you could say, hey, Steve Keim had one where he got, impact players, 3 to 4 of them. You're usually picking out 1, maybe 2. It's just, it's like, I saw a question in the chat earlier, and it might have been Adam or somebody saying that, if Keim, Kliff, and maybe it was, there it is. Thanks, Emma. Are Kyler, Kliff, and Keim all package deal? Can you replace one without replacing them all? Well, look, you're not replacing Kyler, But, to Johnny's point that he's been making all week long is like, if you get rid of Kliff, you can't responsibly give Steve Keim the ability to hire a fourth head coach during his tenure since 2013. That would be 10 years. You would have 4 coaches. That's just that's not a reliable GM. I mean, and that's an understatement given what else is on his resume.
And if I'm Michael Bidwell, you just have to look Kliff in the eye and say thank you, because I think it will be difficult. Like, fans will savor Steve Keim being fired. Let's put Kliff off to the side for a second. If Keim were to be fired in January, majority of the fan base would celebrate that. Do you agree with that, Bo?
Yeah,
I feel like that's going to be celebrated. Michael Bidwell will not celebrate that. He will have angst to do that. He does not want to move off of his good friend, and he knows he watched his father, his late father, Bill Bidwell, go through executive after executive and not win anything.
Yeah, it's weeks of ice cream and rom-coms he's going to be heartbroken for a long time. He is.
He's overseen the most successful run of Cardinal football. Whether people want to admit that or not, that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to get fired. Let me be clear on that.
Right.
And if this team takes a plummet down the stretch, you can't in good conscience, and Bo and I have talked about this already, allow him to pick another coach, because their process in picking coaches is just, I don't even know what to call it. They lucked into Bruce Arians. Steve Wilkes was partying with Steve Keim on a beach once upon a time. They've been turned down by other people. And that brings us back again to another point I want to reiterate. If you're Michael Bidwell, you have to be confident that you can get a replacement for Keim, which I think in-house, they feel like they have a couple of guys. We know they're going to go in-house. With Rod Graves was internal. Steve Keim was internal. Like, think about what you want, but it's either going to be A-Dub or Quentin Harris.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how they do. But then on the flip side, like, what coach are you getting? I have to sit back if I'm Michael Bidwell. And if Kliff gets undressed by Pete Carroll this weekend and it's not competitive, and I say, okay, I got to eat $30+ million, and then I got to be sure I can go find somebody else that can lead our franchise, that wants to lead our franchise. How do I do that? That's a lot for him to do. That's a lot for him to do.
Yeah, no, it's asking him to do the most that he's ever done, make the toughest decisions he's ever made since taking over the reins of the franchise, like he did really before, as they made the move from Sun Devil Stadium to UFP and now State Farm Stadium. But I don't know how we got from slowing down Kenneth Walker onto this whole tangent.
Because this is really where the conversation's headed.
It's the state of the franchise. You can't emphasize how much of a must win, as I almost knock over my liquid death, how much of a must win this is on Sunday for this Arizona Cardinals team. You can't fall to 3-6. You have to get to 4-5, and then eventually you have to figure out how to slay the dragon that is Sean McVay the next week and get to 5-5. It's just it's survive and advance at this point. You've created zero wiggle room, and Vance Joseph and his defense has to be up to the task of slowing down this guy. You have to rattle the cage, and you have to give this Seattle Seahawks team, who's usually like ignorance is bliss because of how young they are, that the honeymoon phase especially at the NFL, doesn't last as long as it has for them. Like, you have to say, hey, this is something, it's a long-term relationship, it's a marriage, and things do get rocky. Believe me, things are going perfect right now, and the Arizona Cardinals have to be the one that disrupted. They have to be the hot blonde that walked across you at dinner and you were caught giving a glimpse at it, and it ruined the old honeymoon phase of your marriage.
And listen, we've all been there. The hot blonde is not Geno Smith. Geno Smith, his cap hit this year, $3 million, $500,000 bonus. Kyler Murray's cap hit in 2 years is $51 million. In 4 years, it's $55 million. Like, that's all I need if I'm Michael Bidwell. That's all. I'm at home and I have Kyler Murray, and I gave him a premium, and we worked from sun up to sundown from February until July to give him this contract. And Kliff Kingsbury, you're the catalyst to that. You make this team go with K1. And if you can't beat Geno Smith at home, however it looks like, I'm sorry, then time's up. Old Kliff, I great guy, great person. We love hanging out with him. Bo sees him every day. Good dude. Is he a great coach? I think we're going to find out pretty soon whether or not he's supposed to be coaching in this league. And listen, underdog fantasy is a great way. You can't bet on Kliff's over under how many times he's going to botch a play call or burn a timeout this weekend. But if you think Kyler Murray and company are going to have a big day, dabble on underdog fantasy. You can search in the App Store, click on the link in the show notes, sign up with promo code PHNX. Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. I'm all over DeAndre Hopkins this weekend. And how can you not be? It's been an unbelievable 1,400-yard pace this season. Make some money on Underdog Fantasy using that promo code PHNX. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code PHNX. Get in on the action today, Bo.
If you are in the doghouse, if you did get caught at dinner doing what I said, then here's a good way out of it. Go to morefurniture.com. Show your significant other what they got going on during their fall
class, right?
Exactly. You could spruce it up, throw some dollars at your living room, your bedroom, your dining room, whatever it may be, and you could save yourself some cash too, because you're going to get a $100 gift card for every $1,000 you spend. Spruce up your home during the More Furniture's fall sale at morefurniture.com, morefurniture.com, $100 gift card for every $1,000 you spend.
All right. Looking at my non-Gucci, it's about that time here on a Football Friday as we do our official predictions. I'm gonna give the floor to my co-hosts here. Bo, what do you like in what could be Kliff Kingsbury's maybe final outing against Pete Carroll? We'll see. Yeah. What do you like?
This team has to respond. This is just the definition of insanity, picking this team to win, beating the Seahawks in a thriller, 29-26. Here are my predictions. Zach Ertz is, you talk about the touchdowns that the Cardinals have given up to the tight ends. Well, the worst team in fantasy football against tight ends is the Seattle Seahawks. Zach Ertz had a decent game against Seattle last time. He scored a touchdown last week. He was actually my offensive star of the game last week. Did okay there. I think he's going to have a big game again on Sunday. My defensive star, I'm looking at the guy who's made 3 game-changing plays all season long, and I look for some more of those come Sunday. Talk about slowing down Kenneth Walker. I know he hasn't been great against the rush, but he's been making big plays for this defense. Isaiah Simmons has a big game for the Arizona Cardinals, and my unsung player is Keontae Ingram, because potentially we're looking at a backfield now of Benjamin and Keontae Ingram. I liked what I saw from Keontae when he got some playing time against the Saints. I think that he could do it again and maybe then some against a rush defense that's not that impressive. Their offensive rushing attack is more impressive than their defensive rushing attack. It's about even what they give up. So I like Keontae Ingram kind of in a backup role to Eno to get some tough yards, maybe even in the passing game as well. So those are mine. I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm taking the Cardinals by 3, and it's going to be one that you're not going to be able to kind of walk away from your TV at all and have to watch this thing and then turn on the post game and hear Johnny and my thoughts.
I'm into it. We have a lot of the same thoughts on this game, but when I don't see our predictions until live right now on the show, and I'm speaking your language, especially the defensive star of the game. Emma, if we could, my picks for this week, Kyler Murray, I need that Kyler Murray-esque kind of performance. He had 3 touchdowns in the air last week. I think that continues. And I also think he has one on the ground. I think the Cardinals have a robust day on offense for whatever reason. I think it's a get-right game for K1 at home. I think this team got the monkey off their back a couple weeks ago against the Saints. I don't think that home losing streak is weighing on them again. And I think Kyler Murray plays one of his best games of the year. And then on the flip side, the best defensive player for the Cardinals right now, I believe, is Isaiah Simmons. He has the ability, game-changing defensive plays, turnovers. We've been talking about this is his rookie season when he didn't know the playbook, but we just said, get him out there, and he's going to get you the football. How about that tackle for loss to give the Cardinals another position offensively last week? The confidence he's playing with, he's bitching at people because they're not getting the call in. You love to see that. The leadership from Simmons. A lot has gone wrong this year, but the ascension of Isaiah Simmons is something that we love to see. And then unsung player, the best outside linebacker right now on the Cardinals roster getting pressure is Cameron Thomas, according to Pro Football Focus. Play him. Let him get after Geno Smith. With all due respect to Victor Dumakagi and Majay Sanders, I watched 97 produce. Let him eat opposite Marcus Golden. If he gets burned in the run game, so be it. But he has an ability to put pressure on the quarterback, unlike many on the Cardinal defense, because their outside pass rush has been abysmal this year. The future is now, and it's 97 on defense for Vance Joseph, and I think it leads to a narrow victory for the Cardinals, maybe a last-second field goal. Maybe they run away with it late. It's 26-24. The Cardinals beat the Seahawks at State Farm Stadium, keeping their season and their postseason hopes alive and even things up with Seattle 1-1 this year.
I love it. I mean, the only thing that has to happen is the Arizona Cardinals need to take care of their end of the bargain here. They need to win this game at home. They've got one win in the last calendar year at State Farm Stadium. I think it's going to make a big difference, though, when you've seen this team the last 2 times on the road. They've struggled, right? And they've struggled as far as the communication, as far as the play getting in. They're not going to have those issues this time around. That's only going to help supplement this offense that the last time we saw play at home played well enough, right? What did they score? 28 points as an offense, plus the 2 that you got from pick sixes, and they had 40 plus points. So it seems forever ago, even though it wasn't that long ago. You had the Minnesota Vikings game in between that, but I love it. I want to see more. I want to see more Cam Thomas, and I want to see more Isaiah Simmons, your 2 top-rated pass rush linebackers, getting after Geno Smith, because he's as far as relative to quarterbacks, he's athletic, but he's not that athletic. Not as athletic as those 2 guys. And you just kind of make him look a little pedestrian to below average for the few times this season. Geno didn't have that great of a game against the Cardinals last time they played.
He did not. Here's the problem with Seattle is that if they get a lead early, they think they can play, and Pete Carroll's got them believing. Bo, they've only had one non-close game this year, and that was week 2 against the 49ers. They lost 27-7. That was the game Trey Lance, fell in. But for the most part, they beat the Broncos in a nail biter. They lose to the Falcons close. They beat the Lions narrowly. They have a close loss at New Orleans. They've won 3 in a row. Cardinals, Chargers, Giants. Those are at least preseason Chargers, Cardinals playoff teams. Giants now a playoff team. And they won convincingly last week. Like, to your point, somebody has to step up and say, no, this is garbage. You're not supposed to be good this year. You're Geno Smith and Pete Carroll without Russell Wilson, and lay the wood on them. And I think you can do that. I think what the game plan that we saw, kind of similar to Carolina when they came to State Farm Stadium last year, and the Cardinals had Colt McCoy, and they jumped out to the early lead, and that game was never close because they said, even though we're Carolina, no one takes this seriously, meaning the Cardinals, you have Colt McCoy, and you're undermanned significantly. And the Cardinals have been playing great football at that point. They need to be shown with a double-digit deficit. The problem with that is, though, the Cardinals don't score points in bunches. They don't jump out to early leads. That's why this is so frustrating, because you feel like you put up 10 to 14 points in the first quarter against them, I think this game's over. I really do. You make them one-dimensional. They get out of their sync with Kenneth Walker. But if you allow them to drive up and down the field and you're playing from behind, it will not go well. You cannot be dependent on fourth quarter comebacks and 2-point conversions and onside kicks. Like, good hell, Kliff. I've seen that time and time again. Most of the time, it doesn't work out for you. So if I'm a fan at State Farm Stadium and I'm using the Game Time app and I'm scoring some tickets, I want to see this team jump out to an early lead for once, convert in the red zone. God, they're due at this point, right?
We're pleading with them. Yeah, I mean,
please.
That's the craziest thing to me is, like, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, right? But they still haven't done that offensively in the first quarter. They haven't accidentally just scored a touchdown. It's unreal. But yeah, I mean, this team, one of the matchups I'm really curious of seeing, and you talk about stopping the momentum and bucking the trends so far through the 2022 season, is Tyreek Woolen versus DeAndre Hopkins. I want to get my popcorn out for this one. I want to see the rookie have his welcome to the NFL game against Nuke. I want to see it. I need to see it. It has to happen, because he hasn't faced a guy the caliber of DeAndre Hopkins. He wasn't available last time. Woolen had a good game against him. And then, like you said, with McCoy was so good last year in distributing the ball to his playmakers. We got to have another big game from Rondell Moore. It can't be one and done and then figure it out for the next game. Like, he's got to start to show some consistency. Zach Ertz says, I picked as my offensive player of the game. If you can start hitting on all these guys and consistently move the chains, be better on third down and way better in the red zone, like what you're saying as far as getting out to an early lead, that's not going to be a problem if they can do that.
They can move the football earlier in games now with D-Hop. We saw it against even Minnesota last week. They moved the ball effectively. The conversion or lack thereof in the red zone is a problem. And I just think that they were the best red zone team during that 10-2 stretch last year because of number 6. He gave them a physical attribute that they do not currently possess, especially now with the interior offensive line being so susceptible to pressure for K1. the margin for error in the red zone has been dismal. Now you assume you've got James Conner back, hopefully, even in a limited role, and you've got Hopkins. And you saw what Hopkins did to supplement in the red zone last week with the one-handed interception. I do not want to see anybody else but those two guys get the early targets in the red zone, assuming Conner plays. No more fades to Rondell Moore. Zach Ertz, to me, on a screen pass here and there is fine, but he's been targeted too much in the end zone. It's got to be D-Hop and then running the football north and west with James Conner. That's what worked last year. Those are your two players you've invested at premium in offensively. And then mixing in, I think, Kyler's legs a little bit, boots, rollouts. They can get 20 to 20, but can they punch it into the red zone? I'll tell you who's keeping you in the red zone. Our buddy Howard at GoPHNX.com. He's got his definitive preview article up now. You can read it. If you become a member for just under $60 for the year, you can cop a free t-shirt from the PHNX merchandise locker. My tees came today. They're in the mailbox. I can't wait to sport them. Hollywood Hills on top of Camelback, the touchdown t-shirt. How about that shirt? I got it waiting for me. Can't wait to sport it potentially as early as this weekend. And then that's my favorite right there. How can he not love the touchdown celebration? I hope we see some touchdown celebrations this weekend, Bo. You might be there in person. You will be in the press box. We got somebody from our PHNX audience about to join you as we're giving away two premium tickets in the end zone for this weekend's game. Drum roll, please. I have the winner here. Again, to enter this, you had to have taken a screen capture, subscribing, 5-star review on the PHNX Cardinals podcast, responding to my tweet. Emma, do you have it up on the screen?
I don't have it up on the screen, but I
then
can
I'm
get
gonna
it.
I'm gonna. Well, we're not doing this. Throwing this together last minute. I got the winner right here. I just, I didn't want to overstep. The winner of the ticket giveaway and a free entry into the PHNX tailgate for Seahawks at Cardinals, Sergio Montoya on Twitter, SMAN8. Sergio gave us a nice 5-star. He's been a big supporter of the show. He is our winner at random for the 2 tickets to the Seahawk game. Sergio, congratulations. Hope you bring us a W on Sunday.
See that, Zach Ertz? Yeah, congratulations, Sergio. Zach Ertz, just looking at the numbers, he's gotten 14 opportunities, targets in the red zone. He's come down with 7 of them. So, it's 50-50 if he's going to in 3 touchdowns. So he's been, as far as the guy that's been able to cash in for you. But with DeAndre Hopkins back, maybe that opens some things up for him. Zach Ertz made a career out of being a huge red zone target. It's just, you need to see more consistency. Since DeAndre Hopkins has come back, I mean, Kyler Murray is a completely different, better passer down there close. It's not, and it's so much better to watch. Such a better brand of football than those first 6 games. Like Hollywood, who I saw again walking around fine today. Kliff said he doesn't know what his timetable is coming back, but he was like, he had that one catch at the end of the Chiefs game. But other than that, he didn't make any catches really in the red zone. So there was nobody you could rely upon during those first 6 weeks. Now you can, and hopefully, I don't say you just completely dismiss Ertz in the red zone, especially against the Seahawks team. I think he could be a big weapon for you. He scored 2 touchdowns against them last season when he played for him, and McCoy was the quarterback. So, it's a take care of business Sunday, right? For the Cardinals, you throw everything at them. Whatever you got, you act like there's no tomorrow at this point, playbook wise, personnel wise, and make sure, because if you lose and you fall to 3-6, 0-3 in the division, it's over. It's not over, like, statistically, mathematically, but it's over.
It's not over in the sense we're not going to be here, because this is
right.
PHNX Cardinals. This is Cardinal therapy. Hopefully for a lot of you, we're getting through a tough season. Hopefully things turn around Sunday. Regardless, Bo, myself, Damian Anderson, Frank Sanders, bringing you premium post-game coverage. We got the halftime show. Bo will be live from State Farm Stadium after the game, get his insights directly from Kliff, Kyler, and company. And in the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcasts. We're having a great time here, persevering. We're not officially on you-know-who, Sean Payton watch here, but I had to do it one time. Keep the good faith. Keep the hope alive. We'll see you Sunday. For Bo Brack, I'm Johnny Venerable. Have a great weekend, everybody.